I dedicated my life for working 2 jobs, studying bachelor's degree, feeding my family. I feel irritated when my wife does less in our house, and now she left me. I, a 43-year-old male, try to do my best to provide for my wife, 38-year-old female, and 2 kids, 3 and 5, as well as my mother-in-law, and would like to think I'm doing a decent job. Over the years, I worked to improve our family's living situation. Not only did I complete another bachelor's and recently master's in a STEM-related degree, I at the same time worked 2 full-time jobs while completing my second bachelor's and put my wife through school as well. She completed a degree where she could make good money, about $60 or $70K a year, in a healthcare field that always has jobs available. But with the birth of our 2 kids, she has since given up on her career to be a stay-at-home mother for the time being. At first, it was a struggle while I was finishing up my master's. Once I completed it, after our youngest turned 3, my career took a jump up, and we are now able to afford our single-income household in a more feasible manner. We are far from rich, but do okay for a single-income family of 4, a little north of $150K base plus bonuses. The past year was overwhelming, per my wife, so even though I now work 75% from home, I budgeted to hire a daytime nanny to help her around the house with 1 child while the other is in school now. My day starts every day around 5:30 or 6 a.m. I get the house ready for the day before the nanny comes at 8 a.m. I get our oldest up and ready for school, breakfast made, and plan out my day. Bring our oldest to drop off and be home in time to let the nanny in. My most recent task at work has me grounded for the next 2 months, meaning I am now 100% work from home. While this is nice, I am busy in meetings all day, as my role manages teams on a global scale as I oversee projects for my industry. For the past 1.5 months, I realized my wife, as much as she says her life is stressful at home, starts at 10 a.m. I asked my mother-in-law and nanny if this was always the case after a week or so of work from home, and they both responded more or less, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. My wife literally wakes up and cooks and then scrolls through her phone or shops from home, which brings me to my gripe. I am glad I'm able to provide her that sort of life since we both grew up lacking in means. I get the possibility of postpartum depression, the stress of having kids, the feeling of being unfulfilled. The fact that I probably am a shitty husband, but for what it's worth, everything is taken care of, and then some. I manage the house's finances, she claims she was too busy to do so, pay all the household bills, I pay my own personal bills, I pay her bills, track and perform all the upkeep of our house, appliances, cars, pets, etc., and I also help pay for my mother-in-law's medical bills and car note. But apparently my life is on an easy street compared to hers. I can't decompress to her because it seems like she always feels the need to one-up me. I had a bad day, but she had it worse, because I'm lucky I got to go away and work. My feet hurt from walking all day during work travel, which is nothing compared to her standing and cooking with a child clinging to her. For the past 2 or so years, I've been told I ruined her life, her opportunities, etc., but when I reminded her of what she says, she denies and dodges accountability. My mother-in-law has brought me aside and stated she's noticed a change in both myself and my wife. I have a greater attachment to my kids, and hell, I've hugged the dogs and talked to them more about my life than to my wife. I honestly feel like I'm in emotional survival mode, as I'm 1 step from moving up the career ladder and 1 step away from finding love and comfort from the bottom of a whiskey bottle. I'm sure I'll be hearing from the manly men of Reddit about how I'm simping, but I'm not a machine. I just want to know and feel that someone I prioritize, aside from my kids, appreciates and loves me for what I do. I'm sure I'll hear from the stay-at-home moms of Reddit, which is fine. I grew up in a single-parent, mother household. It's not easy, and honestly, with the help of her mother and a nanny Monday through Friday for 1 toddler while another child is at school, can you honestly tell me she's having the typical stay-at-home mom experience? Because neither my friends or colleagues who are single parents can say she is. I'm sure the masses of holier-than-thou Redditors will consider this a poorly written fanfic, but it is what it is. Update to add more context. Never cheated. I do work in an industry that has a large female population, but I'm literally an open book with work. name colleagues and staff under me. She has access to my work agendas and correspondence if she really wanted to snoop, but on that note, she still doesn't know what exactly I do for a living at this time. We as a whole family, her parents and mine, have tried to get her to go to therapy, but she refuses, or skirts around the issue. Aside from my coming from a single mother household, my biological dad was present in my life. She has had both parents in a reportedly monogamous marriage for over 40 years. I have tried to talk to her about everything and my own feelings, but again, one-upmanship tends to be the trend here. What I'm getting out of the marriage was asked. Now, aside from my 2 beautiful kids, I've been asking myself that same question. We have a near non-existent sex life, mainly since last year. I always figured maybe it's a part of depression, or whatever she may be going through. Maybe I'm just not attractive enough, or just horrible in bed because of my health conditions. I'm not some supermodel husband, but temptation and opportunity does knock, and I can perform still, but I never give in, because as cliche as it sounds, I honestly do love my wife, and want to only be with her. I'll give credit where credit is due, as I don't want to sound biased. When I say she wakes up and cooks, she cooks for everyone in the house. Myself, kids, mother-in-law, and even nanny. Aside from breakfast, she cooks all meals and snacks. I typically fast until lunchtime, and our oldest tends to eat a small, simple breakfast in case they don't like what school serves that morning. She does load both the kids and her laundry, but seldomly folds and puts them up. I typically do my own, and the rest of my clothes I dry clean because they're work clothes. She does keep track of our pantry and fridge, but after she makes the list, I'm the one who goes out and buys everything, if not delivered. She does clean our bathrooms and house 50% of the time. The other 50% is done by either mother-in-law or myself, or sometimes nanny, if she feels like being extra helpful. Prior to nanny, my mother-in-law was the main help for my wife, up until she had unexpected medical needs. So I opted to hire a nanny to help them both, more so when mother-in-law is having treatments and recovering. Update 2. I showed my wife my post the following weekend, and she read it, and all the comments. Long story short, argument. She left our house to stay with her sister, and I've been a single parent since. It's sad to say, aside from the good nights to our kids, it's all pretty much the same routine. Nothing much else to say other than thank you for all the kind words of encouragement. It feels depressingly sad that I feel that I have to turn to random internet strangers for some sort of validation in my rant. My apologies in advance as I try to keep this as vague as possible. Update 3. Post-birth, our pediatrician's office gave my wife those postpartum depression screening forms, and during the time of both, she scored pretty high and was suggested to see a therapist. With our second child, she scored significantly higher, and I made an effort to get her the help she needs. She refused, so entered mother-in-law and nanny for support. I know what people will say and think, but this is one of the reasons I am not 100% ready to just give up and file our life together away. Also, I know silently suffering in the near and long run of our kids' future will not add to a healthy atmosphere, but neither would a bitter and hate-filled divorce. I know some have compared it to the ripping off a bandage, saying it'll hurt at first, but that pain goes away. But I'd rather try to spare my kids thinking that their parents ended up hating each other because of them, or something along those lines. I've told a few people I talked to in DM since my last post a little more insight on my personal life. Prior to my promotion, I was a project manager, managing teams and budgets, so out of habit, I planned for a lot of what-ifs. That being said, I made a number of contingency plans if sadly things went south. So yes, I have talked to a lawyer, 3 actually, know our rights and what each of us are entitled to, have a draft settlement created and on hold until I feel I need to use it. I know what I want and am willing to offer more than what is fair for our kids' well-being, but also have a plan if we end up going to court. It's 100% on me that I'm suffering in silence, but I'm too stubborn to just give up, so while I'm venting, I don't expect anyone to feel sorry for me. I endure it to keep the norm our kids know, ensure my mother-in-law's treatments go uninterrupted, and of course, the hope my wife would finally be open to give therapy a shot and climb together to a better place. To save you a read, wife left. Came back like nothing happened. She made it about her. Nothing changed. I'm continuing to be suffering mentally, knowing nothing will change while trying to keep it together for our kids. Lots of takeout. The day after she packed up and left, my wife attempted to come back and take the kids with her to her sister's. Naturally, I was against this, and thankfully so was her whole family, including said sister. Not only was it not fair to our kids for her to sweep them away into a home that's not theirs, but to put that financial and housing stress on the rest of her family since she doesn't work, and her sister and her family, husband and 3 kids, stays with their dad in the house they grew up in. After a little over a week of being away, I guess she cooled off, so she decided that it would be fine if she walked in the door with her bags as if she just came back from Target. She came into my office while I was working and angrily stared at me while I sat on a conference call meeting with my team, and I couldn't just jump off, as this is a busy time of the quarter for us. I guess that didn't sit well with her, because once I took off my headset and closed my laptop, she started yelling at me about how much I really don't care about her and her well-being overall. At that moment, I couldn't do anything more than look at her and just shake my head. Mother-in-law came in after hearing my wife yelling and pulled her away, telling her to not bother me, while our nanny kept our youngest away from it all on the other side of the house. That night, after the kids were put to bed, I sat in my office by myself with a drink, as I've been doing for the past nights, and my wife came in. We talked, we argued, we cried, we drank. One thing led to another, and we were in bed. I wish I could say that was our making up, but the next sobering morning, as we laid there, she went on about how hard it was for her the time she was gone. Literally, it was about her struggles staying at her family house in her old room with her dad and sister's family. How lucky I am to be able to stay here and do this and that and buy this or do that and not stress as much as they did. How easy my and everyone else's in our family lives are compared to hers, even though we had similar upbringings. My mind and heart broke that morning. I've been spiraling down since then, and this last week I made another attempt to reconcile and talk things out. But I was met with a shouting match while trying to express my current stress and anxieties with life and work in general. Wife: well, you do know how hard this is all for me. You're supposed to help me be happy. Me: so when it comes to my happiness, stress, needs, and overall well-being, screw me, get over it, right? Wife: we all have our own problems. You need to figure it out and get over them. I don't know who the woman I'm at home with is, but that wasn't the woman I married and vowed to spend my life with and raise our kids together. Since that conversation, I've been noticeably distant with her. I've been sleeping in my office, or on the couch, or with my kids in their bed after putting either one of them to sleep. Still doesn't change her starting her day at 10 a.m. and sitting on her phone talking to her mom groups between cooking meals with the kids in both mother-in-law and nanny's care. Nothing has changed, and I doubt that anything will change. Sadly, I think even if we got a divorce, nothing would change or feel different anyway, since during my wife's leaving, the days seemed like any other day, except with a little more takeout than usual. My main fear there isn't that I wouldn't just lose my wife, I'd lose my kids in the process. So, I guess it's sad to say the grand finale to my story, like a lot of men and some women I've talked to here, I'll just continue to smile and suffer in silence. My mom cheated and left my father for his best friend. She made it look like it's my dad's fault, and I resented him. Now I regret everything. My mom had been married to my dad for 9 years before she cheated and left him for his best friend, who is my stepdad. My father served in the army, and his best friend was this rich guy who I saw hanging out with my mom at that time. During the divorce, my mom told me that my dad was abusive, controlling, and was not there emotionally. That's why she was leaving him. She told me that my dad treated her badly, called her names, and did not love her. At the time, I was only 10 years old. My mom got primary custody, and Dad was stuck paying child support. I only got to see my dad only 2 weekends per month. After that, I held some resentment towards my dad. I dreaded when it was time to see him. He had sold what used to be our house, moved back to his hometown, opened a mechanic shop, and lived in this shop. He was an alcoholic who always tried to sober up when I came to stay with him. He was miserable, lonely, and depressed. He always tried to clean up his house when I went to stay with him, even though it still smelled like alcohol, gunpowder, gasoline, and those car oils. and sometimes I found dirty laundry stuffed in the laundry room. When I turned 15, I started to see him less. I refused to go stay with him and made up excuses. I only visited him a few times a year. One day I went to visit him without informing him. I found him drinking while watching a football game. He was surprised to see me. He quickly started getting rid of his beer cans, cleaning his kitchen, asking for if I was hungry so that he could order pizza, and I just lashed out at him and told him that's why Mom left him, because he was so miserable and couldn't keep his stuff together. I felt guilty afterwards. He loves old classic muscle cars, and when I turned 18, he got me a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS, which he had fixed himself. Later, me and Mom sold it and got a Honda Civic. Anyway, last week I came to visit my mom. I was planning to stay for the weekend. On Saturday night, I overheard my mom and my stepdad talking about what happened 12 years ago, bragging about their affair, and not once even regretting how it affected my dad. All they said was that they felt sorry for him. I couldn't help but cry. I wanted to confront her, but I couldn't bring myself. I wanted to call her names, insult her, but I didn't have the strength. I was full of mixed emotions, but I felt guilty the most. All this time, I held a resentment towards my dad, thinking he was the bad guy, but he was only the victim of my mom's affair. He never recovered from the affair due to his depression and anxiety issues, and all the time I thought he faked to care about me. He genuinely cared for me, and he always tried to stay strong and smile for me. I left the following day and found my dad at his mechanic shop and hugged him. I was crying, and he was puzzled, and I kept saying sorry repeatedly. When he managed to calm me down, I told him everything, and I apologized even more. And when I asked why he didn't fight my mom for my custody, he told me that he knew that his depression and anxiety issues, plus his PTSD, would make him an unfit parent. And he never wanted to ruin the relationship between me and my mom, because he knew I loved my mom, and his ex-best friend loved me and would take care of me more than he would. He said that it was not my fault and forgave me, and he was happy I found out. I want to make it up to my dad, but I don't know how. Update. As some of you said, there are two sides to every story, and I decided to listen to my dad's side. He admitted to being distant and not affectionate after his last deployment due to his PTSD, but the affair had been going on when he was in deployment. I confronted my mom a few days later after my post, and she was defensive at first. She said that I was not grateful for what she did for me, and that she simply protected me from my father. She called him a few names. I didn't want to argue, and I had already chosen my next words carefully. I told her that my father was a good man who was broken by the betrayal of the two people he trusted the most. And the worst, you turned his own daughter against him. I appreciate and am grateful for everything, but it's time I choose for the parent who puts his own daughter's needs first, even if it means making hard sacrifices, and not the one who wants the daughter to satisfy her own needs. Goodbye, Mom. I will keep in touch. Before I left, tears had been building in her eyes, and she just remained silent. She's tried to reach out to me, but I just ignore her or ask her to stop disturbing me. I don't block her, but my message is loud and clear. My aunt has recently reached out to me and told me that my mom is depressed. Well, her husband can take care of her. As for my dad, most of you suggested I sell the Civic and buy the Chevy Chevelle SS back. I couldn't find the person I sold it to, but I decided to look for old, worn-out muscle cars to fix. I've been searching for a while. It was hard, but I had help from a few friends, and even some Redditors who reached out to me on chat. Almost 2 weeks ago, I was lucky and found an old wrecked 1970 Dodge Charger. And yeah, I sold the Civic to afford the Charger. My dad was kind of upset, but when I told him the reason, he brightened up. He's been more than happy to show me how to fix it. I bought an apartment an hour away from his mechanic shop. One Redditor suggested I do a makeover at his place. Well, I've been making time, and we've started to renovate and do a makeover. And my friends from college who are studying interior design have decided to help. It took him a little convincing, as he felt embarrassed, but he finally joined the train. Now, every day after college, I go to visit him, and on weekends, I spend time with him and talk about anything. Mostly, he's interested in my life. He likes soccer and is a big fan of Arsenal. So I always keep him company during match days, pick the opponent's team to add fun, and am learning a little of football. Since I sold my car, he has allowed me to use his 1977 Pontiac Firebird. He's been with it since I was 11, and as long as I can remember, he's never let anyone drive it. Since I've been around more often, he has stopped his drinking habits, maybe a few, and I join him on game nights, but who can blame us? So there's your update. If you made it this far, I guess it is a happy ending. Thanks to all of you again. I have a twin sister, and we never shared the same DNA. It was confirmed from a genetic test. Obviously, I found out that I am adopted. My twin and I are fraternal twins. Recently, we took a genetic test for fun because we wanted to see what we shared and the differences between us. Since we still share genes, fraternal twins are like siblings genetically. My grandparents had suggested the tests and got them for us, so our parents didn't know about it. But our results made no sense. My twins was coming up almost completely as Eastern European and Western European, which makes sense as most of my family are Croatian, German, or Austrian, so all of that would be accurate. But mine wasn't anything like that. It was almost completely Scandinavian, with some Russian and a couple of other places, neither of which were on my twin's result. She had a very small percentage of Scandinavian, but that was it, and we had no matched DNA, which clearly seemed impossible. We were literally twins. We have to share DNA. My twin said they must have mixed my sample up with someone else. We ended up contacting the company, and my twin and I took a test again. It was the same result. Both my twin and I were really confused. We told our grandparents, and they just said that was interesting and said nothing else. My twin said we should tell our parents and see if they had ever done a genetic test, or if any of our siblings had, and then we could see if somehow ours were still right. I mean, it kind of made sense I'd have Scandinavian, because I'm much taller than my mother, and quite a bit taller than my twin, and I'm way better at football and handball than she is. And I'm very blonde compared to the rest of my family, but I had thought it was my German. When we told our mother, they reacted almost the same way as my grandparents, but she seemed annoyed and said that they're inaccurate anyway, and our grandparents shouldn't have told us to take one. And when we asked our father, he basically said nothing. I'm confused. I know my twin thinks it's just a mistake, but I don't think so. We have to share DNA, about 50%. That's how twins and siblings work. Even though we're fraternal, we should still share quite a bit of DNA. But other explanations don't make sense. My mother can't have cheated on my father because my twin and I would still share DNA, just less because we would have different fathers. The results mean we can't share a parent or even be related. But I don't see why my parents would adopt me if I'm not their child, when I don't think they've ever been to Scandinavia, and why they'd adopt a baby that's almost exactly the same age as their baby. I'm panicking. The person I'm closest with in the whole world, who I thought I even shared the womb with, might not even be related to me. My birthday might not even be real. None of this makes any sense, and no one is telling me the truth. I'm also scared my twin might tell her boyfriend about it, and then people might end up knowing that I'm some kind of fraud, and my family isn't my family at all. Edit. I called the clinic where my mother gave birth to all of my siblings. The day of my birthday, my mother is in the records, but only for one birth. Not two, not twins. I don't know if it's an error or my mother didn't give birth to me. Update. So, I'm adopted, which was probably quite obvious as soon as I got the results, but I guess I was in denial. My parents told me a couple of days ago. Not much, but a bit. I know now that my mother was Danish, and my father's old girlfriend from when he was really young, which is seriously weird. I asked them a lot of questions, but I didn't get answers to all of them. I don't know who my father is, how my parents were able to adopt me, and why, if she's even alive. Nothing. But thankfully, I am actually legally adopted by them, which is a relief, since I was worried I might not be. And my birthday is actually my birthday, so they haven't been committing any weird fraud. It's very weird. My sister has been acting weirdly, and my family as well. But in some ways, it's a relief. My parents still feel like my parents, and my siblings like my siblings. I know that technically they're not, but I don't feel too upset about it. I'm just upset that they lied, and also won't tell me everything. I don't know if they genuinely don't know, or don't want to talk about it, but at least I have an idea about everything now. I'm still not quite sure how I feel about it, but I'm glad I know about things now. Plus, now I have a country that's actually good at football to support, which is nice. Maybe someday I'll find out everything, maybe not. I could probably look her up and find her if I wanted to, but I'm not sure if I do if she's still alive. Although everything is different, it doesn't feel so bad, but it does at the same time. It's very weird. But I have a family that loves me, so it could be much worse. I feel sad about my twin since we're not actually related, which feels really different, and she's acting different as well, but I still love her a lot, and my parents as well. I think it will take some time to know how I really feel. In some ways, I want to be mad at everyone and do stupid things, but that's only sometimes. And overall, I feel okay, so that's good. And eventually, I think I'll be content with how everything is. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.